All right. Today, we are diving into something that is genuinely changing how we understand life itself. It's called AlphaFold 3. And this new AI from Google DeepMind is giving us a peek inside our own biology like we've never had before. To really get how life works, you have to see how billions of these little tiny molecular machines inside our cells all talk to each other. What you're looking at here is a spike protein from a common cold virus. Figuring out exactly how it latches onto our antibodies is the whole ballgame in fighting it, a puzzle that honestly has been insanely hard to solve. Well, until now. Okay, so let's get into this new view. Because what AlphaFold 3 is doing is giving scientists this stunning, high-definition picture of a world that, for the most part, has been totally invisible to us. And here it is, the fundamental leap. The older version, AlphaFold 2, was an absolute genius at figuring out the shape of individual proteins. But AlphaFold 3, it goes light years beyond that. We're talking about predicting how pretty much all of life's molecules, your proteins, your DNA, your RNA, even the little molecules that make up drugs, how they all fit together in this unbelievably complex 3D dance. I mean, the scale of this shift is just massive. The best way to think about it is like going from a blurry black and white snapshot of one tiny gear to watching a full-color 4K movie of the entire engine running. For scientists, this is an absolute game changer for everything from discovering new medicines to understanding our own genes. But to really, truly appreciate just how big this jump is, we need to rewind a bit and look at the enormous challenge AlphaFold was built to solve in the first place, a problem that had scientists scratching their heads for half a century. It's called the protein folding problem. So proteins start out as these long, floppy chains of things called amino acids, but it's the final, super intricate 3D shape they fold into that actually determines what they do. Their shape is their function. If you can predict the shape, you know its job. If you can't, you're just guessing. And figuring out that shape just from the sequence has been one of the biggest holy grails in biology. And this right here, this shows you the revolution. For decades, finding a single protein structure meant painstaking lab work. We're talking years, sometimes an entire PhD for just one. Then AlphaFold 2 came along and could spit out a prediction in minutes. It completely rewrote the rules. And the scale was just staggering. In about a year and a half, AlphaFold 2 predicted the structures of over 200 million proteins. To put that in perspective, all the old lab methods combined had solved about 150,000 in the last 60 years. It basically created a nearly complete library of life's parts overnight. And this was the engine that made it all happen. At its heart was this incredibly clever AI module they called the Evoformer. It basically learned to predict a protein's shape by looking at how similar proteins had evolved across different species over millions of years. This was the sophisticated foundation that AlphaFold 3 was then built on. Okay, so let's get to the upgrade. If AlphaFold 2 gave us the complete parts list for the machine of life, AlphaFold 3 is starting to show us the assembly manual. So let's break down the big changes. First, the scope just explodes. We go from just proteins to basically all of life's molecules. DNA, RNA, those little things called ligands that act like keys for our cells. Then, the core tech underneath gets a total overhaul to something called a diffusion network. And the result? A massive accuracy boost. At least a 50% improvement in predicting how all these different pieces interact, and in some cases, it's twice as accurate as anything that came before. Now, this new engine is really cool. It works a bit like those AI image generators you've seen everywhere. You know how they start with a bunch of digital noise and slowly turn it into a clear picture? Well, AlphaFold 3 does something similar. It starts with a random cloud of atoms, and then, step by step, it refines and arranges them into the most likely, most accurate final structure. But, and this is a really important but, as powerful as this all sounds, AlphaFold 3 is not a magic wand. It's an incredible tool, for sure, but it has some very clear limitations, and it's super important that researchers know what it can and can't do. So let's take it for a little test drive. First up, a success. When you ask it to predict a really stable structure, like this protein latched onto a piece of DNA, where there's tons of evolutionary data for the AI to learn from, the results are just breathtaking. The prediction you see here is a near-perfect match for the real thing they found in the lab. But here's the other side of the coin. What about molecules that are naturally wiggly and flexible, like antibodies? Well, since they don't have that same deep evolutionary history to guide AI, the model really has a hard time. The prediction is, well, it's a mess. It really doesn't match reality at all.
It just goes to show that the model is at its best when predicting a single, stable shape.
So to just quickly recap the big limitations here, it has trouble with things that move and change shape. It can sometimes hallucinate. Basically, it'll confidently create a beautiful-looking structure that just doesn't exist in nature. It gives you a static photo, not the whole movie of how molecules move. And at least for now, you can only use it for non-commercial research through their web server.
So when you put it all together, AlphaFold 3 isn't the final answer, not even close. It's really the start of a brand new chapter in biology, one where the whole process of doing science is about to get seriously supercharged.
See, it doesn't replace scientists in the lab, it actually makes them way more powerful. AlphaFold 3 can generate a really accurate map, a really strong hypothesis in just a few hours. That lets researchers focus their time and money on testing the most promising ideas first, which could dramatically speed up the pace of discovery. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. This is the new way of doing things. The future isn't just AI, and it's not just lab work. It's this powerful feedback loop between the two, where AI predictions guide the experiments, and the results from those experiments help us train even better AI models. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Think of it this way. AlphaFold 2 handed us the dictionary. It gave us the shapes of all the individual parts of life. But now AlphaFold 3 is starting to teach us the grammar, the rules for how all those parts connect and interact to create the complex language of life itself. The new stories scientists are about to write with that knowledge could completely redefine medicine and biology as we know it.